I'm joined now by Christian Jourquin, the President and CEO of Solvay. You've been with the company now for more than 40 years and shortly to leave as the CEO. How has the company and its philosophy changed since you joined?
I believe that one point which has changed is the need to adapt to speed. Years ago, we had always the time to think about what could happen tomorrow, and today you have to react on much shorter time. For a company like ours, I believe there is a huge advantage. We've been established 150 years ago, and we have a very stable shareholders structure, which gives us the possibility always to think long term. So you have to act short term, but you need always to have a very clear idea of what the future will be.
So where do you see the future for Solvay, a global but European-based company trying to grow in a very difficult economic environment?
I would dispute that our future would be just European company. It's true that we have a very strong European basis, but in the philosophy that we followed the last years, what we've tried to do is to decentralize the group as much as possible, bringing decision centers to Asia, bringing decision centers to the States. And I would say we have to think much more globally, even if country by country or area by area, we act locally. But the need today is really to have a global picture of the world. And when I say that, it's not just integrating business. It's integrating the different philosophy.
So how do you do that? How do you cope with the competition now coming from Asia? Very successful global companies beginning to make serious inroads into areas that traditionally were your territory.
I believe that the key has been, is, and certainly will be, as I mentioned, to decentralize and to go where the growth is and where the talents are. When you look at the structure of our management, you will see that we have today practically representatives in our upper management of all areas. Not yet sufficient from Asia, but we're working on that. And the fact having decentralized, having opened research centers, headquarters in these areas, you're able and credible to attract new talents.
It does seem that a lot of European companies like Solvay are at a competitive disadvantage now compared to a lot of these Asian tigers coming along. How are they going to cope with this fresh competition?
I believe that it's typically the topic of today. We've discussed about the skills that are needed for competitiveness and to be successful tomorrow. You know, I'm impressed when I go to, for instance, Asia. We speak about emerging countries. They are not emerging at all. They have emerged. Now the question for us is to know, are we still there or are we diving? I believe that the sense of the water is not exactly the same. And money, they have more than we have. Entrepreneurs, they cultivate the feeling for success, and they have. Engineers, they have. Now, what is our asset? First of all, I believe still that we, at this moment, have a good education system. But the layers that we have in our activities between, let's say, the level of the management and the floor, we will have 10%, 20% of the workforce that is needed in this country. So when we speak about skills and education, my conviction is that we have to avoid this kind of aristocracy between academic education and technical and basic education. Our strength is, at this moment, the integration. Now, what we have to do to be better, that's another stuff.
Presumably part of that idea of taking expertise from all parts of society, a large part of what should be being done is exploiting the knowledge and power of the older generation.
I believe that there you touch one of the most important problems or opportunities for tomorrow. First of all, I believe that we have to maintain, to secure a good maintenance of our assets. And that means that we have to be sure that people are trained along their whole life so that they can contribute very well until their retirement age. The second point is, and I'm absolutely convinced of that, we have to bring older people in contact with the young generation. And when you see the capital, the assets in knowledge that we have with older people, what we structure from the basic school until, I would say, a university, contacts between older people and younger people, explaining how their job is nice, we would learn to younger people that working is wonderful. And I believe that one of the things missing in Europe is that we don't give dreams to younger people.
Well, that's fine for traditional jobs that have always existed, but of course now we're looking at a situation where in 2 or 3 years' time people will be getting jobs that we haven't even thought of yet. How do you cope with providing the skill set for those new jobs?
I believe that this is really a very basic question that you ask there. Where I'm scared is that looking at universities, the tendency is to go to silos that are narrower and narrower. So we bring on the market highly specialized people, but where I would say the lifespan of their knowledge is too short. We have to segregate better between, I would say, what is a basic education and the way people are thinking. When you look at these research engines, it's wonderful. You ask a question and you have the answer. What we have to teach to people at university, that's to ask the right questions. And that will come to bridging or putting bridges between the different disciplines and going back to what should be the principle of university.
So how do you do that? How do you make those connections? How do you do what I think you've described in the past as transversal intelligence?
Look, we are obliged to do very often in companies what universities should do. And that means that when we hire very highly qualified people, we integrate them in our corporate university, whereby we create, I would say, a world of interdisciplinarity, where people think together on topics, so that everybody bringing his own piece of knowledge, you can make across the border the right conclusion and educate them working together.
My observation is that you are, for a CEO, remarkably laid back, and other people have said this as well, that you have a different air about you than a lot of highly pressured executives. What is that?
Well, that's more a personal question. I told you I had a heart infarct 12 years ago. And you know, the night that you face yourself in an hospital brings you to realize, first of all, that your power is limited in the time, that you have to concentrate on what is really important for the long term of your company. You learn to delegate and to trust more people, and certainly to have faith in their capability to face the problems. And I believe that gives you, I would not say lay back, because shareholders maybe wouldn't appreciate this word, but it gives you serenity in looking at your own position and looking at what you're building for the company.
Now, many of the people who are going to be watching this interview may well be at the start of their careers. So there you are at the end of more than 40 years in Solvay. What 3 bits of advice would you give to somebody about to embark on a career in business who may be thinking, one day I want to be a CEO like Jourquin?
I would say three things. You asked me three things. I would say first point, integrate as a mathematical equation, integrate the signals coming from outside. You have this myth of Platon about the cavern. You have always to know where the reality and where is the shadow. And if you have the right insight in the different elements of the mathematical equation and that you integrate them properly, I believe you reduce the chance of being wrong. That's one. Second point of integration, integrating people. You know, I was impressed, I believe it was the CEO of Ogilvy, who, when he appointed somebody, offered, you know, these Mariushkas, these Russian puppets, and asked the manager, appointed manager, to open the puppets. And the last one, there was a message. This will happen to your company if you choose your collaborators smaller than you are. I always tried to have collaborators better than I am. Third point, I believe, is to integrate also the different values. I've been working in Holland for some years, and in a meeting, one of my collaborators made the sign of the cross and said, "Well, so sorry, we are not speaking here about religion. It's a business issue, nothing to see with religion. When you're facing a problem, you have your brains, you have your guts, you have your heart, and you have to watch for the money." Now, I believe that if people want to be successful, we have to care that the 4 points of the compass are covered. And I believe that a large part of the problems we are facing today in society, generally speaking, is that we think, we look at the money, we forget the guts, and we've forgotten the heart.
Christian Jourquin, the President and CEO of Solvay, thank you very much for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you, my pleasure.